wherever you're from, welcome. And I respect your time. I know there were actually hundreds of people RSVP'd for this event, but I know how busy you are, and so I want to respect your time. So we've got an hour. I am going to take you through the definition that I use of personal branding that I hope will inspire you. I'm going to take you through 5 ways to master your personal brand. Of course, there are so many things that we can do. These are 5 of the top ways that I work on myself and that I also work on with my clients. I guess I have 2 challenges for you. One is to identify the 1 or 2 of the 5 things that I'm going to share with you that you're going to personally commit to working on. And then maybe the next month you do another one, and the next month, and suddenly you've got a personal brand that you're proud of. And then the other objective that I have really actually is more my personal objective, which is I want to fundamentally change the way you think about personal branding. So I realize this is a diverse group with some people who have been following me, some that haven't, some that have done some work on their personal brands, some that really haven't done anything and you're just curious, and everything in between. So, but that's my goal, is to inspire you to try a couple of new tactics to master your brand, and also to think about it in a new and different way. I want to encourage you to use the chat. You're welcome to connect with people on this meeting. If you want to, in the chat, even enter your LinkedIn for other people so they can connect with you. I absolutely advocate and support that. You can tell people where you're from, and of course you can ask questions. So after I've shared the 5 ways to master your brand, I'm going to open it up to Q&A. I've got some questions that people sent me in advance. I will also look in the chat, but my priority is going to be answering people who physically raise their hand and ask me here live, okay? So I'm going to start by introducing myself. For those of you who I haven't met before, I'm going to make this brief. This is about you, not about me, but I just want you to know who I am and what I'm about. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Dr. Andrea Wojnicki. Please, I know that's a mouthful, just call me Andrea. I'm an executive communication coach at Talk About Talk. You can check out more at talkabouttalk.com. But I coach ambitious executives, probably like you, on topics like confidence, formal presentation skills, listening, storytelling, communicating with precision, and on, all the communication skills. I'm not a leadership coach. I'm not a career coach. I double down on communication. And the topic that gets the most traction easily is personal branding. And of course, that's why we're here for this hour. I would say the second is probably overcoming imposter syndrome and communicating with confidence. That's probably number 2. So I share my knowledge, my expertise, and my coaching through a podcast where I have almost 200 episodes now. It's called Talk About Talk. If you're interested in subscribing, you can learn lots from me there. I also have a bi-weekly newsletter, which is basically getting free coaching from me every 2 weeks. I also do one-on-one private coaching with senior executives, and I do master classes with small groups. I have online courses. I also do corporate workshops and keynotes, so there's all sorts of ways to learn from me. Before I became a coach, I worked in brand management. So there's a theme here, right? I love marketing and branding. I went to Harvard Business School, where I earned my doctorate in marketing at the business school, where my research focused on interpersonal communication and consumer psychology. Yes, related to what we're talking about here today. When I graduated, I worked at the Rotman School of Management at the University of Toronto, where I taught in the MBA program. And then a couple years later, I started Talk About Talk, where I am really and truly now in my happy place. I love what I do so much. My favorite thing is to hear from someone either directly or through an email how something that I taught them elevated their confidence and their credibility to the point that they're achieving their goals. Whatever that goal is for you, it's getting promoted, it's getting a new job, it's leading a team with confidence, kicking butt when you're doing a formal presentation. Whatever it is, that's the transformation that really excites me. Enough about me. Let's dive in. I want to start, as I said, by talking about the definition of personal branding. So this I know for sure. I'm very obsessed with the topic. I do a lot of research online and elsewhere, and there are so many different definitions of personal branding out there. I'm not here to tell you that my definition is right and everybody else's is wrong, but I think it's worth clarifying for all of you what definition we're talking about for this hour of this training. It might be more helpful actually to say what we're not talking about. So we are not talking about reinventing you. There are books. There's a great book by Dory Clark called Reinventing You. That's not what we're talking about. We're not reinventing anything. You may discover something new about yourself. That's fair, but we're not reinventing you. We're also not here to turn you into an influencer. And I always joke about this with my clients. I say, it's not that you couldn't become an influencer if you want to after you do this work, but that's not our primary objective typically. We're also not here to monetize your brand. And I know that sometimes employers get a little bit concerned if they hear, not all employers, I think that this is slowly evolving where people are starting to say, okay, this work on our personal brands is important. So if my folks that report to me are working on their brands, that's a good thing. But there are some old school people that still think they should avoid training their folks on their personal brands because that means they're going to start a side hustle and quit their job and then become an influencer. So that is not what we're talking about here, okay? What we're talking about is your professional identity. We're talking about your personal brand, your reputation. And in the context that we're talking about today, it is a professional, a career context, right? So it's your whole person, but really focused on specifically on your professional identity. Okay, I have some slides to share. We're going to get into the definition, as I said, and then the five ways to master your brand. Here we are. This is here and now. So as I said, your personal brand, you can think of it as your professional identity. If you've done any reading at all on personal branding, I can almost guarantee that you have read this definition, which I love, from the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, who famously said years ago, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So for years, I was using this as a definition, and I would ask my clients, and I'm going to ask you now to consider, what are the important stakeholders who are influencing your career thinking and saying about you when you're not in the room? Depending on what level you're at, it might be worthwhile to get really specific here and ask yourself, what are my boss and maybe my boss's boss thinking and saying about me when they're in a succession planning meeting and my name comes up? That, my friend, is your professional identity or your personal brand. And a lot of people, when I tell them this, to think about this, I see the body language, right? They're like, and I say, okay, that's okay. If there's a disconnect between what you want the brand to be and what it is, that's okay. We've got some work to do. But this is a very helpful exercise. So this, as I said, definition is what I was using for a couple of years. And then last year, I had the great fortune of interviewing Seth Godin for my podcast. Talk About Talk. It's episode number, I think it's 171. We started talking about personal branding. I definitely went off script on this podcast episode, by the way. People always ask him all about his books, and I was asking him about his books, and then we went hard on the personal branding. And I said to him, do you think about your brand? And he's like, I mean, people look at my orange glasses and they think that's my brand, but that's not my brand. And I said, well, what's your brand? Like, how do you think about this? And he said, your brand is what people think you're going to do next. I was like, my brain exploded. I said, hang on a second. I need to take a deep breath here. This is a great supplement to Jeff Bezos' definition. What are people thinking and saying about you when you're not in the room? And maybe even more importantly now, what do people think you're going to do next? So here's the next exercise I encourage you to try right now. Take out a piece of paper, or you can write it on your phone if you've got your phone here. What do you want to do next? I want to write a book. I want to get on the TED stage. For you, it might be, I want to get promoted. I want to be respected by the C-suite. I want the board of directors to trust me. I want whatever it is. I want to get a new job. I want to then ask yourself, do the stakeholders who have any influence on your career, do they think it's possible that that's what you're going to do? The stakeholders could be your customers, could be your boss. Ask yourself, is there alignment here? And again, if there's not, I think this is important insight. Don't freak out. For most of us, there is a disconnect between what we want to do and what people think we're going to do. Okay, so we have these two definitions from these two very, very smart, very successful people. But I'm thinking what these two definitions lack is agency. I'm guessing, based on the fact that you've taken an hour out of your busy schedule to be here, that you believe that you can influence your brand. And that's really where I come from. I know there are things that we can all do to optimize our brand. These two definitions are just backward looking, right? What are people thinking and saying about you based on your past behavior? And what are people thinking that you're going to do next? Yeah, that's the future, but it's based on your past behavior, right? So here's what I encourage you to think about. And this is I guess one of the things that I'm hoping I can help you change in terms of how you think about personal branding. So I say personal branding is about being yourself on purpose. There's really two important components here, right? The being yourself is the you, the real, authentic, true you. Certainly your best self, but it is yourself. Okay. So being yourself on purpose. And I have this in capitals because that's literally why we're here, what we're doing right now. We are unapologetically, strategically, in a disciplined way, focusing on optimizing our brands. Okay. So yes, you can do these thought exercises of what do people think and say about me? What do they think I'm going to do next? I would say that what's maybe more important is to think about being your best true self strategically in a disciplined and yes, unapologetic way, focusing on it. None of this, I don't really like focusing on my brand. It feels salesy. It feels whatever. No, no, no. Your brand exists whether you strategically manage it or not. So why not present yourself in the best way? And again, we are not talking about creating any sort of falsehoods here. So I'm going to stop sharing just for 1 second. I want to check in if anyone has any questions about that before I go on. I also want to share a little story with you, actually. This happened about 3 weeks ago. I was in a virtual meeting like this with my advertising agent, my promotions agency, and one of them asked me a question. Maybe we can create a post about this. Maybe we can put this in your newsletter. Maybe there's something we can do with this. But this is a really important question, Andrea. What do you think is the most under-leveraged tool that people don't appreciate when it comes to building their strong personal brand? And the reason I'm sharing this story with you is that my mind went one place and they all were making a different assumption. They thought I was going to say, working on your LinkedIn or improving your self-introduction or networking, or establishing thought leadership. These are all tools to build your brand, right? My mind went to identifying what your brand is. So this is a key distinction between how I coach and think about personal branding relative to just about anyone out there. My belief is garbage in, garbage out, quality in, quality out. If you jump to LinkedIn and updating your corporate bio and all this stuff before you've done the, yes, hard work, but incredibly satisfying work of clarifying your self-identity, then it'll make it so much easier. So when I'm with my clients in doing private coaching sessions, we spend 2/3 to 3/4 of our time on step one, which is identifying your brand. And then it makes step two, the communicating your brand, so much easier. So with that kind of framework in mind, I'm going to now share with you 5 ways to master your brand. So based on what I just said, you can probably guess that the first thing I recommend all of you to do is to do some deep thinking about who you are. And so yes, you can take out a blank sheet of paper and in fact, I suggest this. Take out a blank sheet of paper and start writing down what are my expertise? What am I an expert in? What are my strengths? What are my passions? What are my skills? And it'll start flowing. And if it feels awkward, by the way, you're probably doing it right. So you can start with, I call this internal input, writing down what your key strengths, what your unique positioning is. You can also get external input. You could ask your boss, your friend, your partner, your kids. You could ask people personally and professionally for input to what important elements might comprise your personal brand? I've got a bit of a list here. If you've taken any personality tests, the question is, in that personality test, for what traits are you off the charts? So for the Myers-Briggs MBTI, most popular personality test in the world, I'm an ENTJ, but I say I'm actually just an E, because on the introvert to extrovert scale, I am off the charts extrovert. On the NTJ, it's like, well, depends on the day. It's kind of in the middle, right? So the NTJ doesn't matter. What really matters is the extrovert. So if you've ever taken any personality tests, ask yourself, where am I off the charts? Where is it like a really strong outcome in that personality test? Those things probably matter and might be incorporated into your personal brand. What else? One of the favorite exercises that I take my clients through is this archetype exercise where we identify which one or two of 12 common archetypes personify them, resonate with them. And then from this archetype, it's kind of like doing a personality test, but it's focused on archetypes. From your archetype, your primary and secondary archetype, you can see what your unique superpowers are, what your strengths are relative to other people. So, I have an image here of like the superhero. So yes, hero is one of the archetypes, but there's also the caregiver, the citizen, the explorer, the rebel, the magician, and on and on and on. So I am a magician and a sage. The magician part is what I just told you about, really loving helping people transform. And the sage is, my academic, my love of learning, teaching. You see my bookshelf behind me. That's the sage. And so I think about those two themes when I'm representing myself. And those two themes do show up in my personal brand template. If you want to take the quiz, it's actually really fun. I said this is one of the exercises that I take my clients through that they love more than just about any, is learning your archetype. So it's talkabouttalk.com/archetypes quiz. Where else? Two more suggestions that I have off the top of my head for where you can get input to answer who am I. The next one is formal feedback. So what are the compliments that you receive in your formal evaluations at work? They say you need to work on this. Oh, but you do this well, and you need to work on this. What the things that they're telling you do well are probably common themes that you've seen in your evaluations over the year. So the formal feedback, the positive things that you get, not your weaknesses, not your development areas, but the positive things. And then the last one is the compliments that you hear most often and or that really light you up. So someone recently introduced me when I was doing a corporate workshop, and they said that I was a real innovator, that I was podcasting before she knew what podcasting was, and da 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 da. And she introduced me as an innovator, and I was like, thank you, like nice compliment. I didn't say this to her. In my mind, I was thinking, I'm not an innovator. That doesn't light me up. What lights me up is this transformation, or even the sage thing. Like if she said I'm an exceptional teacher, that would have lit me up. So what lights you up? The compliments. The theme that I want you to remember as you are creating your brand identity, you're listing the themes that are your skills, your strengths, your expertise, and your passions, is that the criteria for what ends up on this document is that it needs to be positive. So it's compliments, not development areas, right? Unique and relevant. So relevant to the identity that you're trying to create, and unique. The most important thing, though, is unique. And a lot of people don't get this. And that's why it is actually the next thing in my list of 5 ways to master your personal brand. Focus on what makes you unique. And I realize as you're looking at this, you're probably like, what? I thought this was going to give me training on LinkedIn. So this is an incredibly powerful insight if you can just trust me. Most of us, I'm going to say personally, and also the folks that I'm coaching, are focused on trying to be better, right? We're self-improvement, we're ambitious. And I think that's fantastic, especially in the first half of your career. You're looking around at different people who you admire, and I really admire her leadership style. I'm going to try that. Or I admire how this person is very organized, or I admire how this person does their public speaking. What you can try, it's really not about being unique when you're more junior in your career. But when you hit about mid-career, that's when things change. And if you can double down on your unique strengths expertise, skills, and passion, that is when you are going to knock it out of the park and you are going to be your happiest and your most successful self. And I cannot say this enough. I've had clients who told me that they, will be invited to many first round interviews, but they never make it to the second round interview. I'm thinking about a specific woman that I was coaching, and I met her and I said, okay, let's start focusing on your brand. And she said, I really have issues with my communication skills because my resume is great. I go in and I do the first interview. They never call me back for a second interview. So I asked her, what makes you stand out as a human resources? She's a vice president of HR. So I said, as a human resources executive or leader, what makes you stand out? And she said, well, I think they're looking for someone who can combine the technical expertise, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, that's weird. She didn't understand my question. And I said, so again, what unique things do you want to share about you? And she went back to what they were looking for. And I said, listen, the reason you're not getting second interviews is because you're trying to guess what they're looking for as opposed to walking in confident about your true, unique strengths. And that's very, very compelling to people. This is really important work to do. So how can you do that? I'll tell you how you can do that. You can, when you're in a meeting, and I've done this, when you're in a meeting, and especially if you're feeling like a little bit of imposter syndrome, like, what am I doing here? Ask yourself, what is my unique strength or expertise or skills where I know I can add value in this meeting? I did this once when I was in a board meeting. They were talking about finances. Yes, I have a doctorate in business. I also have an MBA. I can look at a balance sheet or income statement, but these guys were getting into a lot of detail, and I started to have imposter syndrome. And I said to myself, I can add value here based on my branding and strategy expertise. So I raised my hand and I said, based on my expertise, in consumer branding and blah, 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 here's what I think we should do. And everyone turned their head. And I realized in that moment, I had reset the conversation, I had added value, and I had reinforced my own brand, my own professional identity. I'd reminded them very subtly of what my unique value is, what my expertise is. And I encourage you to do the same. So I'm not a fan of scripts, but I have all sorts of prompts to share with you. And this is a great one if you are ever stuck, not sure what to say in a meeting, but you need to contribute. Think about your unique strengths and based on your own experience, what you believe, should be done, or the decision that should be made, or the input that you can add to the conversation. Use this prompt based on my experience, or even better, based on my expertise. So I have the saying that I hope you will imprint in your brain, and I will say that this is one of the most important things that can make a massive difference. If there's one slide that you're going to screenshot from this talk, it would actually be this one. Unique is better than better. Try to convince yourself that instead of improving in this skill, shift your focus to what are my unique strengths, and then double down on those. And as I said before, you are sure to be your happiest and most successful self if you're doing that. I mean, here's the way to think about it. The people that that are the most successful and the most satisfied in their careers, are they doubling down on their unique strengths? Exactly. Okay, moving on to number 3. This is a big one. I have a couple of podcast episodes actually on this, and I always get a lot of comments about how when people think about this, it can quickly help you improve your self-awareness and make a massive difference in signaling what your brand is to people. And it's about being more conscious and deliberate about the words that are coming out of you about you, right? This is your story. And as I say, there are a million ways to tell the same story. There's a million ways of telling your story. So why not tell it in a way that helps you accomplish your goals? Again, it's truthful and it's authentic. You're not misrepresenting yourself, but think about your own career narrative. There are so many ways that you could share that. So share it in a way that reinforces your professional identity, your ideal professional identity, and it helps you accomplish your goals. A couple of suggestions for how to do this specifically, because I realize that sounds sort of vague. If you've ever listened to the podcast or you've done any of my training sessions or you follow me on LinkedIn, you've probably heard me or read about this many times. I'm really big on the self-introduction. Podcast episode number 170 reviews this framework that I created. And I also wrote it up and submitted it to Harvard Business Review. And in 2023, it was one of the top 3 most downloaded articles of the year. So it's a 3-point self-introduction framework. Instead of starting from, I graduated from university and then I did this and then I did this. No, you start with present, then you go to past, and step 3 is future. So present tense is where you start. This is where, of course, you would say your name and I work at this company and I do this, right? So the basics. And if you've done the work on your brand, you can also say my happy place, my passion is, elevating the careers of executives by helping them improve their communication skills or whatever. So it's present tense and you're reinforcing your brand. Then you go to past tense and this is where you establish credibility. So depending on the context, you could share 1 or 2 or 3 things. It could be your education, your credentials, a previous job that you had. Please don't just say, I've been working here for 8 years. So what? How about I've been working here for 8 years where I came in as an intern and now I'm a vice president and I have an army of 200 people reporting, whatever it is, right? Please don't fall into the trap of just saying how many years you were there. It's like, and what? And I've learned, and I'm even more passionate about, and I've developed the skill in whatever. So step 2 is past tense, establishing credibility. And then step 3, the one that a lot of people forget, is future. So make a quick statement about how excited you are about what's about to happen. Like I did when I introduced myself at the beginning of this session. I said, I'm really excited to share with you the 5 ways to master your personal brand. This is actually the easiest step, but so many people omit it. I call it the icing on the cake. And research shows that enthusiasm wins in negotiation contexts, in teaching contexts. Students are more likely to learn. In coaching contexts, they're more likely to be successful. In sales contexts, the enthusiastic salesperson is more likely to close a sale. In job interview contexts, the more enthusiastic candidate, all else equal, is more likely to get the job. So use the self-introduction strategically, the self-introduction framework strategically, present, past, future. You can also control your narrative when you are sharing your career journey. So sometimes if you're in a job interview, people will say, tell me about your career story. Or even if you're at a networking event, like, why don't you tell me about yourself? What did you do before this? And that's like the cue, like they want to hear my career journey. So here's my input on that. Don't fall into the trap of assuming the chronological, first I did this, then I did this, then I did this, then I did this. That is an easy framework for us to follow, but it's probably not ideal. So why not just preempt your answer with, I would say over my career, the thing I've realized is that my passion and now my expertise is, so similar to the self-introduction framework, start by anchoring your answer about your journey in what matters today, because that's what you want to be memorable for, right? The primacy and recency effect says the first and last thing that you say are going to be most memorable. So don't start it with graduated with a commerce degree in 1997. No. That's not what matters the most, right? Anchor it in what matters. And then you might go back and do the chronology, or even better, you might say, there's really 3 things that I think stand out in terms of key milestones or accomplishments that I'm really proud of. So think strategically. This is about controlling your narrative. You can tell your career journey any way you want. You don't have to just read off your resume. So improving your awareness and being a little bit more strategic can be very helpful here. You could also control your narrative in the words that you share about yourself in your LinkedIn profile. So in your LinkedIn profile, I tell people, this is free online real estate that you control. So please, if you've got your settings set to private, make it public, knowing that no one else can touch your profile except you, okay? And then you want to optimize your headshot, your banner image, and of course your headline. You have 220 characters underneath your name for you to reinforce your brand, to control your narrative. So sure, title at company, right? Jennifer at Deloitte, consultant at Deloitte, or executive communication coach at Talk About Talk, or finance leader at ABC company. Great. What else? Industry, function, leadership style. You have 220 characters. Now, you don't have to use all of them, but again, this is free online real estate. So why wouldn't you fill that out? And the same thing with the about section. Use the elements in your personal branding template to fill out your about section with positive, unique, and relevant things. And by the way, you can also use the self-introduction framework in your about section, present, past, future. It works beautifully. Some people are concerned when I talk to them about controlling their narrative that they may sound arrogant. And so I share with them these 3 magic words, which really makes things much less awkward, less arrogant sounding, I guess. And it's people tell me. So maybe you are an exceptional people leader and you have such a strong followership, but you feel weird introducing yourself that way. You could say, my name is, I work at whatever, blah, blah, blah. I lead this department. And then you could say, people tell me that I'm a really strong people leader. And frankly, while I'm in the finance industry, it's actually working with people that is my true passion. That does not sound awkward at all. So I encourage you to try these 3 magic words. People tell me. Okay, on to the 4th of 5 ways to master your personal brand. And it's related to what I said in terms of controlling your narrative. But this is more about networking online, actually, networking virtually. LinkedIn makes it so easy for you to do this. And I talk to clients literally every day that say, oh, my profile is not optimized and I really don't enjoy spending time. So I've got a few hacks to share with you. The first thing is, in terms of your profile, the 3 most important elements are the things at the top that I just mentioned: your headshot, your banner image, and your headline. So your headshot, you need a big toothy grin, right? Where you look professional. It's not like a cropped image of you on vacation. It's you looking professional. It doesn't have to be a professional photo, by the way, but it needs to look professional. The banner image, don't leave it generic with the gray wave. Put something in there. It could be a stock image of, I don't know, technology or something related to finance or something related to sales. It could be your employer's logo. There's so many things. It could be a quote, right? The sky's the limit. It could be a photo of you giving a speech. If you're giving keynotes, that would be ideal if you can find a picture of you online, but put something in there. Okay. And then of course, as I said, you've got 220 characters in your headline. You want to update all of your experience, all of your credentials, and LinkedIn makes it so easy. Like I said, they keep feeding you like, why don't you update this? Why don't you update this? Make sure your LinkedIn profile is optimized. I work with an executive recruiter who about 5 or 6 years ago used to tell me that lots of people don't have their LinkedIn profiles updated. And I always just think they're busy. That has changed now. And she said, your LinkedIn profile is like, the front door or the front of your store, right? It's like, it better be enticing. And it says a lot. Nowadays, she said, if I see people's LinkedIn profiles that are not complete, if that banner image is still the gray wave line, she thinks to herself, not very conscientious. They don't care how they're representing themselves. So I hope that inspires you. A couple of other things that you can do. I do this myself, and I really encourage you to do this when you're building out your digital network, your online network. It is connect with everyone you meet. And I mean connect on LinkedIn. So if I'm going into a meeting with a client and I see a bunch of names on the invitation, I will try to go in before, if not, definitely after, and I will find them on LinkedIn and connect with them and say, looking forward to meeting you tomorrow at 10 a.m. at our meeting. Or if it's afterwards, it's like, great to get to know you. And this serves there's so many benefits of doing this. You're expanding your digital network, which is good. And you are, especially if you meet with them before or you connect with them before, you are providing yourself with an opportunity to kind of accelerate the relationship trajectory. I did this recently. I grew up in Calgary and I was connecting with someone and I saw she was in Calgary. So when the meeting started, I said, hey, are you in Calgary? What neighborhood are you in? Whatever. So you can You can make connections. Maybe it's through like you went to the same school or even you have connections in common. So connect with everyone you meet, ideally before, and if not, then definitely after. And the after point is something that I'm going to bring up in a minute. People tell me all the time that they are kind of overwhelmed and unsure of and uninspired about posting on LinkedIn. And I say, it's way easier than you think. I'm going to give you the instructions right now. Here's what you do. You start going through your feed and you find someone else's post that you like and you comment on it. And then you think, I think people in my network would be interested in this. So you click repost. Always, always, always add a comment. Don't ever repost without a comment, please. It's a pet peeve of mine because it's a missed opportunity to reinforce your brand. So you repost someone else's post and you say, great points made below by so-and-so. I would add this, or I especially love this point. So that's one way to do it, is by going through your feed, finding a post you like and commenting on it and then reposting it. The other thing you can do is if you want to subscribe, if you have a subscription to, or you find online an article in Inc. magazine or Fast Company or HBR or whatever you're reading, you find something that you like, do the same thing. Put a link to the article and then just make a comment. You know, this article is about 5 ways to master your personal brand. I think I'm going to try all of them. I'm especially focused on number 4. That's why I'm doing this post. You see what I did there? But the point is, you don't have to create white papers or do some, crazy thought leadership to start posting on LinkedIn. It's not difficult to go through the feed and find something that someone else posted and or find an article that you like and post it with your comments. That is going to help you reinforce your personal brand and also your network. Okay. The fifth and last way that I'm encouraging you to master your personal brand is, I'm calling it get out there. And what I mean is in-person networking. Now, of course, this might be, the dreaded networking event, but I encourage you just to make your default yes to every invitation you get to conferences, networking events, galas, and also opportunities for you to join associations, to join clubs. And I want to also encourage you to think, not just, so my brain automatically goes to, in my industry, is there a conference or an association? But even outside of your industry, it might be something to do with your demographic, like your gender or your nationality, where you came from. There might be some kind of club that you can join. And also think for profit and not for profit. Just get out there, right? Even though I'm an extrovert, I sometimes am hesitant to, get out there, but I never regret it when I do it. It always meet people and learn things that are amazing. So I encourage you to do the same thing. Okay. The last thing in terms of mastering your personal brand and getting out there is, I alluded to this in the last one, is always closing the loop. So if you meet someone in a virtual meeting, right, and you haven't connected with them yet on LinkedIn, after the meeting, send them a connection request and say, great to meet you. Why? Because if you don't close the loop when you meet someone for the first time, you might as well have not met them. I really believe this strongly. And I kind of think about this for myself too. Why make the effort to go to this conference, this networking event, this gala, join the club, whatever, if you're not going to close the loop? When you meet new people, send them an email after, or even better, provide them with some value. Say, listen, when we were talking, I said I was going to introduce you to this amazing person. Here's an email introduction. I leave it to you two. I know that you're going to find great value. Lovely to meet you. Or you send them a message, a DM on LinkedIn, and you say, here's that article, or here's that podcast. Someone sent me a podcast episode today that I cannot wait to listen to. And it's like, that person is providing value to me. So is there a podcast episode that you want to share? Is there an article you want to share? Even a post. You can actually go on LinkedIn and find a post that you know is relevant to your friends. Some people will actually tag the person in the comments. And what I do though is I go up to the top, the little 3 dots, click on that, go into your DMs, find the person you want to send it to, and say, this post that I just found reminded me of you. I thought you might find it helpful. And then you just paste the link, and it's a wonderful way to close the loop. So make a promise to yourself, whenever you meet someone new in person or online, always close the loop. Again, if you don't, why are you even at the networking event? You're not starting a relationship and then it's going to randomly, serendipitously kind of grow into anything unless you close the loop and go back to them and say, great to meet you, and whatever, provide value, invite them to another event, whatever it is, always close the loop. Okay. So here we are. We've got our 5 ways to master your personal brand. As you're doing that, remember the criteria is you're thinking about the positive, unique, and relevant themes. They are strengths, skills, expertise, passions. And you need to make sure that these are things that are positive, unique, and relevant to you. Most importantly, unique. Unique is better than better. That is the transformation that I'm hoping you're starting to sink in for you about this personal branding work. Is a little bit of work goes a long way. And if you're going to do anything, I want you to start thinking about what your unique traits are. Moving on in the list is control your narrative. I want to encourage you to be a little bit more self-aware and conscious of the words that are coming out of you, whether you're introducing yourself, whether you're talking about your career journey, whether you're updating your LinkedIn profile, updating your corporate bio. Think about controlling your narrative and how you're telling your story in a way that serves you. And then move on to networking and optimizing your digital presence, obviously virtually and in person. So getting out there. I call it getting out there. Make yes your default to all those invitations that you receive. So you may be feeling a little bit overwhelmed. By the way, these are just 5 of the truly like infinite number of things that you can do to signal, to strengthen, and then signal or communicate your brand. So I wanted to share with you, before we go into the Q&A, I want to share with you 2 programs that I've pulled together. So in the past, I ran some 4-week, like 1 month long personal branding boot camps. I think some people actually in the audience here have done those boot camps. Nice to see you again. And those boot camps have been very, very successful. And we decided at Talk About Talk, we decided to expand those and make them now 6 weeks long instead of 4 weeks and call them master classes. And we're going to expand the focus to be personal branding and also establishing your executive presence. So specifically in these new master classes, you'll have the opportunity to build your unique, powerful personal brand. You'll actually come out with an 8.5 by 11 page where you've written down what your 10 to 15 themes are for your brand. You're going to learn, you're going to have lots of practice to introduce yourself with confidence in various contexts. We will take the time to optimize our LinkedIn profiles. We are going to look specifically at confidence building mindsets and tactics to help us show up with more confidence and credibility, and then how to establish executive presence. That's exactly what we're going to cover. So I've got two times where the masterclass is available. The first one is starting in just less than a month. It's for women only. First time we've ever done this, for women only. If you're interested in learning more, just go to talkabouttalk.com/fall 2025. And there are only a few spots left in this one. And it's for women only. If you're interested in doing it, if you miss it because it fills up, we've only got a couple spots left, and or the timing works better for you, we also have one starting on January 21st. It's 6 weeks long. Includes a bunch of things, by the way. It includes live training with me in a small group. It includes a Slack group. It includes this wonderful workbook that's going to guide you through everything, and it's going to become your playbook for working on your brand. The live trainings for both of the sessions are on Wednesday at noon, and they are recorded. And I will give the participants in the masterclass a private link so they can go watch it on my YouTube channel. It's not available to the public. So if you have to miss 1 or 2 of the sessions, those are available online for you afterwards. And if you want to save $250 for the January program, you can do so if you sign up before December 15th using the promo code SAVE250. We're now on to my favorite part of these LinkedIn Live training sessions. If you have any questions about personal branding, about the master classes that I just mentioned, about anything to do with communication skills, I want to hear it. I'm going to prioritize the people that are here right now answering their questions first. And also we've got the chat that we're going to look at. But I want to just remind you, if you want to learn more from me, if you want to sign up for the newsletter, you can find it on the website easily, or talkabouttalk.com/newsletter. You could also connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not connected already, and you can also subscribe to the podcast. So that's it for the slides. And now I would love to hear any live questions that people have. Who's got a question? Mo. Hi, Mo.
Hello, I was trying to find the raise the hand thing, but now I see it, so I'll
Nice
go
to see you, Mo.
Great to see you, and so actionable, your tips in 5 ways. I had a question for you because lately I've been thinking about the say yes to everything. And I've gotten myself into a situation where I've said yes to too many things. So I'm curious, like, how do you manage like your network and your priorities? Because I also just reread the generosity burnout article from
Yeah.
HR as well.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. So
Yeah. So, I mean, I think my answer might sound a little bit motherhood, but I really, really, really mean this. And yes, I experience the same thing, Mo. The feeling of burnout and exhaustion and like, okay, I can't do both. How do I choose? It's really about being strategic about your priorities. So, even in running my business right now, I'm really big on growing my platform. So that means I'm going to focus on certain things and not focus on other things. Or if in your business, you know that there's a certain target market and you're invited to a couple of events in a week, and you can, say you're invited to 4 events one week, and your capacity is 2. So how do you decide which ones to go to? I would literally or physically, I would write down a list. Like, my priority is this needs to align with my target market. My priority is it needs to be like no more than a half-hour drive away, or whatever. Like whatever the priorities are, the criteria are for how you make the decisions about what to do and what not to do. But knowing that you can change your mind about what those rules are, like I think of them as like boundaries. Like, my boundary is that I do this and I don't do this, but those can change, right? Like, you're managing your time. Do you have any most specific examples of like a decision, I guess, that you were trying to make about how to weigh 2 options or something like that to
well,
make this a little more real?
yeah, I was reflecting on your recommendation to always close the loop and make sure you reach out to folks, right? And so when you attend one of these events, sometimes you meet 20 people, and I would love to close the loop with all of them. But then to your point, it's like, okay, I got to prioritize, right? Some of these relationships may drop off, and I have to be okay with it. And then the
Yeah.
opposite happens sometimes, right? There's some other people who are on my strategic priority list, let's say, right?
Yeah.
I don't think of it in that way. It's not fulfilling for me, um, but then I'm like, oh, I reached out to this person and they never got back to
Yeah.
me. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like both ways of not taking
Yeah.
it too personally. So
So,
that's
okay.
kind of what I was
Okay.
looking
I've got two answers that I think might help you.
Yeah.
And this is really real for me. So one thing is, in terms of managing my time, I am big on batching. So if you go to 2 networking events and you've got like 20 business cards and from one and 10 from another, I would say Friday afternoon, block off 45 minutes and crank through the great to meet you, great to meet you, great to meet you. Do it all at once. And then your brain isn't taxed with starting something new and then going back to it and whatever. It's less exhausting. I use batching for,
Mm.
like, it's one of my fundamental philosophies for how to be as productive as I am. So batch it. And then the other thing is, I get a lot of requests from people. In fact, I just got one literally before I opened this meeting, from someone who I really, really care about, who said, "Can we meet for coffee?" I am writing a book right now. If I meet you for coffee, I'm not writing my book that day, right? And I can't afford that because this is the most important priority in my career. So I'm sorry, but can we wait 6 months? And I've been saying that
Mm.
a lot lately, and people actually seem to respect it.
Yes.
So if I know not everyone's writing a book, but there is a thing that you're working on. And if you say, and sometimes it breaks my heart because it's people that I really miss, but I know that it's not, because I tried to do it without setting boundaries and it just didn't happen, right?
Well, waiting 6 months to talk with you is well worth the wait. And
Oh my
that's why we come here, right? We come here so we can get a little bit under
God.
it. So
Yeah. So, so sweet. Well,
thank
okay.
you.
Okay. Who else has a question? Tasha, thank you for the heart. That's so nice. Who else has a question? You can put them, raise your virtual hand, raise your real hand, and or put it in the chat. Okay, I'm going to look in the chat. So I'll start at the bottom. Tasha said, how do you communicate and share with others when you consider yourself a generalist rather than a specialist? So Tasha, I don't know what industry you're in, what function you're in, what kind of company you're in, but I do hear this a lot. There's a lot of people say that one of their strengths is their broad experience, and I can tell you that I don't know if you're on the job search. Most employers are not hiring people because of their breadth of experience, unless you're going for CEO, in which case breadth of experience actually is critical. But most of the time, that's not the case. So what I would do is instead of forcing yourself to identify the industry or the function of all of the ones that you have experience in, I would say maybe there's something else about yourself that unifies your experience. Maybe it's your leadership style. My leadership style and my leadership strength in doing this has gotten, brought me many opportunities in all of these functions or all of these industries. You could also ladder up and say the unifying thing across all of my experiences in my career so far and what's motivating me in the future is really my purpose. And my purpose is whatever, making an impact. My purpose is answer that for yourself. And then maybe that's a way that you can bring it's the common string or the common element across your varied experiences. I did coach a very impressive CEO a couple of years ago, actually. He recently referred someone who reports to him to come and work with me. But he had the same thing. So he was going for a CEO position where a breadth of experience is actually a big asset. But we came up with this narrative, again, controlling the narrative. We came up with this narrative for him where he said, my breadth and depth of experience affords me like a library of case studies that I can use when I'm examining questions or decisions or strategies for this new company and in this new role. I have this whole library in my mind and in my experience of things to draw on that will help inform the decisions that I'm going to make, et cetera, et cetera. And it worked. He ended up getting the job. But there's different ways of thinking about it. But until you reach real senior levels, unless you're a consultant, right? Sometimes consultants, it's a great thing to have breadth of experience. I hope that helps. All right. Clarissa asked this great question that I think about all the time. And I do get this question. Do you recommend using business cards at networking events or offer to connect via LinkedIn? So I have business cards. I have square business cards that on one side have my podcast cover art. And on the other side, I'm showing this to you here. I have my name, my title, my company, and a QR code to LinkedIn. So when I'm at events, I always offer people the card, but I think it's more important to have, and you can actually put it on your phone, right? You can connect phones with someone and automatically connect on LinkedIn, make it easy. All else equal, I would say that having a business card is better than not having one. Why? Because when the person comes home at the end of the night and they stick their hands in their jacket pocket, they're going to pull something out and they're going to be reminded of you. I recently interviewed the Honorable Marie Poulin, who is a retired senator in the Canadian government. And she is one of the most gracious people I've ever met. And she has a lot of advice on networking. So if you look at the Talk About Talk podcast, it's one of the more recent episodes. She talks about having in her right hand pocket, she has her business cards, her left hand pocket, she has everybody else's business cards. And when she meets you, she pulls one out and then she puts yours in hers. And when she goes home, she adds everything to her contacts list and she closes the loop. So I would say my son, my 22-year-old son just started a job and I said, did you get a business card? He's like, no, but I kind of wish I did because when I'm going to these events, and I said, exactly, you should tell them. I don't think it makes you look old school, especially if you have a really awesome LinkedIn profile to follow it up with, right? Okay, hope that helps. We have someone with their hand raised. I'm not sure how you say your name. Niharika?
Yes, that's correct.
Hi.
Hi. I know that we just have a minute, so I'll just be quick. So I've been with the current firm for about 5 years, and out of the 5.5 years, I've been on mat leave for 2 years. So now I'm trying to move to the next level. So I actually got this question from HR because I think the average time to move to the next level is like around 3 to 3.5 years, and for me
Yeah.
it's about 5.5 now. So how do I answer that question to HR? Because he asked me that, you've been in this role for 5.5 years. Like, why are you looking for a change now? So should I mention that I was on mat leave? I know that he's the HR of the same company, but I'm not sure if he knows I was on mat leave or not. So how do
Okay.
I answer this to him? Should I mention it or should I not mention that?
So I'm not a career coach. I'm just going to make that clear. I want to stay in my lane in terms of communication, but this
Mhm.
is a great example of when you control your narrative, right? You could say, listen, I've acquired many, like start with the good things. I've acquired many, many skills. I want to remind you though that I was on mat leave twice. I now have two incredible, young kids at home and I'm ready to, be enthusiastic. So actually a lot of the
Mhm.
themes of what I shared today
Yeah,
apply, right? So
true.
start
Yeah.
with your strengths and then you can get into the details and then end with the positive statement of enthusiasm. I
Okay.
think it kind of all works. So I see that it's 1 o'clock. I'm going to answer one more question because I realize there are a lot of questions here. I'm also going to take some of the questions that were here in the chat and I will answer them on LinkedIn in the post that I'm going to create with the link to the video and everything. So don't worry, you will get your questions answered. But there's one more question here from Michelle who said, how you best describe your present tense when you are in transition and a job search? And I see a couple people like that question. So, and I have heard this question. So you're not saying I should have been more inclusive in how I describe the present tense. It's not just I'm an executive communication coach at Talk About Talk. So instead, I think you know what I'm going to say here, Michelle, right? Instead, you're going to share your expertise. You can use the word leader or executive or leader is great in the blah, blah, blah industry where my expertise is, right? That's not going to sound awkward. It's not going to sound awkward. If you're actively job searching, you could say, I'm currently in transition and I'm working on, developing this skill and I took this course and you just get right into it. You're reinforcing your growth mindset. You're reinforcing, and it's up to you whether you want to share that you are in transition directly or implicitly or not at all. I think that's up to you, but you can introduce yourself. And by the way, I know people who are actively employed at companies who will introduce themselves as a leader in a certain industry and not mention their employer. And some of the senior folks that I coach are like, actually, my employer is not the big part of my brand. The big part of my brand is my expertise in leading these kinds of organizations in this industry, right? So I would kind of flip that question on its head and say you absolutely do not need to mention your title and your organization. The key, most important thing when you're reinforcing your brand is to reinforce your unique strengths, skills, expertise, and passions. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I respect your time. I would happily stay another half hour. That's the truth. But I'm gonna end it there and I will answer the questions in the comments of the LinkedIn post. And I want to say thank you for being an amazing audience. And we'll talk soon, hopefully on LinkedIn or elsewhere. Bye.